States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In case of fire, there are two ways to exit these chambers. To my left, your right, through the council chamber doors. Turn left, walk down the flight of stairs. Turn left again at the bottom of the stairs and outside of the building. Or the best way, perhaps, is at the rear of the chambers through the double doors. In either case, again, once you're outside of the building, please get a safe distance away from the building. Secretary, please take the roll.
Charles Durin.
Here.
Charles Ladd.
Here.
Nick Lefakis. Absent. Mary Scott.
Here.
Virginia Higley.
Here.
Ken Nelson.
Here.
Linda DeGray.
Here.
Sarah Gruber. Absent. Guillermo Salazar is in San Diego. And Richard Suzak is here.
Alternate DeGray will be sitting in for the absent commissioner. Approval of minutes, November 15th.
So moved.
Second.
Again, any additions, errors, or omissions?
Looks pretty good.
Hearing none, all in favor? Against? Did you vote?
Yes.
Okay. 700.
I'm only next to him, that's all.
Well, they could see down that way. They could see Kenny, but...
All right, it's okay.
Okay, got another one for
Okay,
15th.
November 6th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made second. Any errors, omissions?
No, look good there, too.
It could be the way I was reading it, and I just have a question. On page 11, top, it says Commissioner Lefakis pointed out on page 7 on the packet and asked why there were 4 mailboxes on the 3, and I thought it was you, Kenny.
No, it was Commissioner
Okay,
Lefakis.
and again, that was my mistake. Then
Yep.
never mind. That was it.
You all set? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. This time I saw you.
What about November 15th?
We just did.
We did November 15th.
Oh, why is it still in here?
Didn't you table it because of an omission or a change or something?
Yeah,
Yes, and we went through it. We just
and then we came back, yeah.
Did it by-
What was the one before that?
There was only two. November
There were only 2 on the agenda.
Oh, okay, that's this one.
Okay, new business.
Public participation.
I'm sorry, yeah, public participation. I didn't have it here. At this point in the meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission welcomes comments, concerns, and opinions relating to planning and zoning in Enfield from anyone who is present, provided that you may not discuss any matter of business at this time that is already elsewhere on the agenda, any matter that's part of an open public hearing of the commission, or any matter where a decision of the commission may be pending. Is there anyone would like to address the commission under those conditions? Anyone like to address the commission under those conditions? Last call to address the commission under those conditions. Okay, moving forward, no bond releases. Nobody likes to get their money back because we must have some out.
Well, we'll divide it up between us.
Okay, old business. Public hearing 2879, 91 Simon Road. This is a public hearing that is closed. If you wish to take action tonight, we'd have to open it or put it,
Everybody ready to vote or no?
That's at your discretion, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry?
It's at your discretion if everybody's ready to...
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I'm asking.
You guys ready to vote?
Are you all set then?
Okay, open it up.
Okay. Then we'll open public hearing 2879 for discussion and vote.
I'll take the roll call.
Yes, please take the roll.
Charles Durin.
Here.
Charles Ladd.
Here.
Mary Scott.
Here.
Virginia Higley.
Here.
Ken Nelson.
Here.
Linda DeGray.
Here.
And Richard Suzak's here.
Alternate DeGray will be voting in place of the absent commissioner. couple of things I was going to say, because there had been some questions before, and I noticed on one of the items people had said about the, whether the tops had been moving or not. And in the engineering report, I saw, this is, it's, it says, it was addressed to Lori, and this is on the, I don't have a date. November 29th, 2018. And it says Lori reviewed the attached map together. It does not give conclusive information about the ground elevations. As a 2017 survey, elevation points weren't taken at the same locations as the 2006 points. Elevation differences between these points could have already existed in 2006 as the elevations were taken at the same horizontally located points. The map could give an indication if there was any significant movement of soils in 2006. There was a lot of people that said it had moved and some had said it hadn't.
Jack DeBibbo.
This is from John Kabibbo, right, to Lori, and Jennifer got a
Mr.
copy.
Chairman, we can't hear you. Could you try speaking or moving your mic a little
Okay, I'm
closer?
sorry.
That would be greatly appreciated.
Sorry.
Thank you.
You find your draft friendly resolution.
Try that
Vote on
upstairs.
the waivers first.
Yeah, okay, let's see then. Well, I don't make motions, so who's gonna take control here? Yeah,
Kinda.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the waiver to eliminate the sidewalks.
Approve the waiver to eliminate sidewalks.
Right, and then we either vote for it or we vote against it.
They're asking for a waiver on the sidewalks, so
clarification, because we discussed this before. Are we talking a waiver just on one side? Because Kenny, on one of the
right now,
things?
it's just whether we're doing sidewalks or not. If the waiver passes, there is no discussion about
Right,
sidewalks. 'Cause it
okay,
ain't
well,
yet.
that's, all right,
If it fails, then we will discuss the sidewalk layout
okay.
under.
I thought Enfield was striving for a walkable community, and as such, you need sidewalks. And I'd like to see sidewalks. It'll get people out, it'll get people chatting with each other in the yards. It's just a good thing to have sidewalks, in my opinion.
Well,
Over drains.
with the houses and young people, I agree, because people, especially nowadays, are more concerned with health and walking, and sidewalks are be necessary. To me, why are you thinking?
All the larger subdivisions that have been approved in the last 15, 20 years all have sidewalks. We've set a precedence, and I don't think we should veer off it at this point.
I agree.
I concur.
And I agree too. And again, what we have to realize is that, because there was a petition, we have to approve it by supermajority. So,
Was there a second to that?
yeah, so that's the reason why we're going down this road.
Yeah, I think sidewalks are definitely
I will
important.
second his motion.
Okay,
I'll go to vote.
okay. All in favor of, the motion was a 4.
Correct.
The-
To eliminate the sidewalks.
Right, motion,
So it's a negative, all right.
Right, right.
So if you're voting
If you vote
for,
yes,
There will be no
there will be no
okay.
sidewalks. It's-
all in favor?
Sidewalk, of no sidewalks.
the motion was
If you
to
want sidewalks,
waive the requirements
no.
of sidewalks.
Don't want sidewalks, vote yes.
That's what I just said.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what gets me
Okay.
confused, because in the past, we've did a negative vote, and you voted yes for the thing. Now,
So the motion
Okay,
was
the
to
motion
waive-
was to not have any sidewalks. So if you don't want any sidewalks, you vote yes.
Okay, that's
If
why I
you
asked, all in
want
favor?
sidewalks, you vote no.
right.
Right.
So the motion is, say it again.
All in favor?
Motion to, the motion was to approve the waiver of sidewalks, which means that you would be
Oh, all right,
approving.
approve the waiver, all
That's
right.
why
Right,
it's worded.
right, so-
because they asked for a waiver.
Right,
We're
so-
approving the waiver or denying
Yeah,
the waiver.
well, that's what got me confused.
Motion to approve the waiver,
Right, okay,
yes,
that's.
would be-
My hang-up, all right.
no sidewalks, and
favor?
no would, so.
Opposed, unanimous, 700,
No, 07.
00,
07,
07,
0.
0.
Yeah, yep.
Motion fails.
Okay, that's the first
Okay,
one.
that's,
Now it's this cul-de-sac.
okay, the motion on the next one, the request is the cul-de-sac.
Well, I think we discussed that that's not, that's a non-issue at this point, right?
You have to make a motion and approve it or deny it.
Yeah,
It's
because
not a
they
non-issue.
requested it.
I don't think that it's good practice to waiver a waiver. I think it sets precedents, but that is what is in front of you tonight.
Can we read it? Can,
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the waiver to waive the 1,200-foot requirement or
Can we do
cul-de-sac
that, or is
requirement.
that, ZBA?
Second.
If you're talking about waivers, they are permitted in subdivisions, but the McKenzie case is only zoning as far as waivers are concerned.
That's good to clarify it then, all right. The motion is on the table, is there a second?
I seconded it.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the waiver.
can we discuss?
Yeah,
So my concern with this whole issue with the cul-de-sac is, where are you determining the start of the cul-de-sac? Are you starting it at the beginning of the boulevards, what Lori suggested, or are you starting it at the intersection of that street, the last street before the cul-de-sac starts? And so if you're starting at the last street, the cul-de-sac's not 1,200 feet, it's just under. If you're starting at the boulevard, it's over 1,200 feet. So, I mean, this is where it gets a little,
I think if you look at the definition, it starts from where there is actually an ingress and egress, where there's a road that goes in two directions to two different places. And that's the way I interpret it. That's why the engineering has been interpreting it. So,
That's the way I interpret it too.
that the boulevard
agree.
Just makes it still one road, so it would have to start at the beginning of the boulevard.
which is at intersection with Simon Road.
right.
Yes, and I agree too.
would.
That's where it would start as well.
And I understand that you can waive a boulevard to 1,200, but they want to waive,
Cul-de-sac.
a cul-de-sac, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, a cul-de-sac. But this is a waiver of a waiver, and I don't think that that's something that we can do.
We don't allow boulevards by regulation.
well, we don't deny them either.
Well,
They're not in there.
Right.
they're
We
not-
have them in the industrial park, but that's the
Well,
only place.
They're not there.
They're just
Then, I
not
mean,
discussed as a possibility. Right. So
So-
you have
so
a
my-
motion on the table?
Yeah, so my interpretation of the waiver, of waiving the waiver, is that we really cannot do that considering that we have, the way our regulations are set up. That would be my opinion, is that we can't do that because we already have a waiver in place up to 1,200 feet. So that's where I fall on that.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, which was to approve? Those opposed? Unanimous
Seven.
denial? Again, 070, got it right.
So, given that, any other motions, for the most part, are almost moot, because without that road, you really can't approve the
Still
subdivision.
have to vote because
And
So I would,
I understand where you're coming from, but this is where I think we have a difference of opinion, because I'm not willing to waive the length of the cul-de-sac, but I don't consider the beginning of the cul-de-sac Simon Road. I consider the beginning of the cul-de-sac at that intersection. And the boulevard, each side of that boulevard is wider than two-lane roads that exist in the town of Enfield. So if either side of that boulevard is shut
Yes,
down,
sir.
you can do ingress and egress on one side and still be wider than certain public roads in this town. I think that they have done,
Your mic is on, but you're not speaking into it, so we
But-
can't hear you real good.
okay. You understand what I'm saying? So, because the motion failed, I agree with Charlie. We still have to go forward, because I interpret that subdivision, or that cul-de-sac starting at the intersection, not at Simon Road. So whether the cul-de-sac failed or not, no cul-de-sac should be over 1,200 feet. And I don't consider this one over 1,200 feet, because they did the boulevard. They've gone above and beyond with the width of each side of the boulevard. If it was just a single lane boulevard on each side, then I would say yes. But it's not. It's double lanes on each side. If you were to put a solid yellow line down each side of that boulevard, you'd have two ingress, two egress.
but
Because
it's
it's-
still one street.
But
But you could put two streets side by side. That's how wide they are.
It's one street.
so, Mr. Chairman, if I may, what I think is kind of getting at is that he would like to continue to vote, because there are other issues that are different than the waiver of the length of the cul-de-sac. So,
Yeah.
in other words,
I
he'd like you
understand
to
that.
move forward and
Still can't build the boulevard because we failed that.
We didn't fail the boulevards.
No.
no, you failed the
the
exceedance of the
waiver.
1,200
No, we failed the
feet.
waiver for a
The waiver for the-
1,200 foot.
Right.
Now, the way it's going with the
Right.
interpretation, the way most of you are interpreting it is from Simon Road, well, then yes, you would fail the subdivision. But again, I wanted to explain how I see they put that loop road in, so there is an intersection. They got 20 feet on each side of the boulevard. You know, so really, if they were to just add yellow lines down both sides of that boulevard, they could have two roads side by side, and I don't think there's anything in zoning that prevents that.
Are you saying make two
well,
one-way streets?
No, not one. Why would they be one way? They're wide enough to
Because they
be.
have to be separate.
the loop,
They are separated.
no,
I hear what you're saying, but it's one name, one street, as far as the town's considered.
The way it is with the boulevard right now, and the only difference is a yellow line. If you run a yellow line down the right side of the boulevard and split that lane in half, it's still wider than some of the public roads in Enfield. And if you run a yellow line down the left side, it's the same thing. So he could have, you know, two street names, the streets are side by side with the median in between them, and nothing built between them. That's how wide this is. So everybody's worried about emergency personnel getting in and out of there. It's wider than other roads
I
on
think-
each side.
I think that we can talk about this forever, but there's also other concerns that I have. I'm not as knowledgeable as Rick is with the, you know,
The
the
terraces.
sheet flow and all that other stuff, but I have concerns about the escarpments. As a citizen of Enfield, I
well,
have
we're
read
not
the
on
papers.
escarpments now.
All right, so then why don't you just move forward and go through the sequence of motions
The
then?
only thing I was going to say.
Oh, I thought we
along
voted
with
on
what-
that.
what-
No.
Well, no, there was 3 motions for a waiver.
And it does say
that
we have
point.
to give a reason for our vote.
Right.
Which I think is only fair to the applicant, because
Absolutely.
Ginny may have her issues, Mary may have his, Charlie may have his,
Yep.
and that's going to help them prepare if they decide to come back, if it fails.
It's
for
true.
another round.
Yeah, you're right. Well, then,
So you still have the one waiver to consider the use of a 900 linear foot boulevard in lieu of 2 means of ingress and egress per section 5B, 3B, and section 3M.
But how can we allow a boulevard when the,
That's, if you want to waive it, you can. If you don't, you don't.
We're still on this one. We need a
but
motion.
we don't allow boulevards in the
No,
regulations?
this is still the cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
I'd like
Right.
to make a motion.
We don't necessarily list them as a permitted design, but there are waiver provisions. So the applicant is saying, we'd like to waive the fact that you don't have this in your design.
Right, it has nothing to do with the 1,200 feet.
No, nope, this is strictly that it's boulevard in lieu of a means of ingress and egress.
No,
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 fee in
ingress,
lieu of.
yeah,
Boulevard.
ingress,
Has
egress.
nothing to do
Oh,
with
ingress,
1,200 feet.
egress.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the waiver of a 900 linear foot boulevard in lieu of 2 means of ingress and egress per section 5B, 3B, and section 3M.
Second.
Now you can talk.
Now, okay. Now discuss what,
Because I have a problem with the boulevard only because of the fact that, again, the maintenance of a boulevard is always, devoted to the town, and it just adds additional, maintenance that the town is going to have to do, and the maintenance always seems to fall through the cracks. Nothing ever gets done, and these boulevards are not allowed, are not, I guess, even addressed in our regulations because of the fact that they're not allowed for that reason. And the town doesn't need additional things to maintain. So in that vein, I don't think I can support that motion.
I agree.
Jenny raised a thing that I was just, raised a question in my mind also, was whether it should be, how do you use that into one division or one development? And it's not, and you've got traffic going both ways. On the street, really, it's 2 streets that with that width, into there.
On another note, though, since I've been on this commission, we've been told by the town attorney twice that if it's not written in our laws, it's not allowed,
That's right.
period.
That's
The
That's
town
what I tried
attorney's
to bring up.
definition of whether something's allowed in town or not. If boulevards are not in the law, they're not allowed, period. So therefore, I'm going to vote against it.
And I don't feel the boulevard satisfies
It's all-
the means of ingress, egress, the 2 means.
Also, our
so.
regulations require 2 means of egress and exiting, I guess.
In and out.
It does, yeah, and it doesn't do that, to me, the boulevard.
Anybody else?
Well, then again, the motion is if you vote in favor, you are approving the boulevard. Okay, all in favor? Those opposed? The abstentions?
I abstain because
One
I wasn't
abstention.
here to hear the attorney's opinion on those other issues.
This is over the last 12 years.
Yeah,
It's said
I
that
understand.
twice at
Yeah,
least.
it's a constant. It's been a constant, yeah, of course. Okay. Laura, you're keeping us straight here. Where are we now? Oh, yeah, okay.
I
A
just-
motion to approve the
Without,
fee.
without those 3 waivers, it seems unlikely that this could ever be.
can't now.
Right, so it
Right.
cannot. So I would just go to motion.
Right, with the
motion of
boulevard
approval.
failing, even though I interpret the cul-de-sac, the beginning of the cul-de-sac at a different location, if the boulevard didn't pass, doesn't matter. It backs it back up to Simon Road. So that takes everything away that I was saying.
I think we still have to vote, though.
Lori, this was a
just-
sensitive one, so
Just go through each motion, then. You're right. I think that's better we be safe.
That way there's no questions later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, make a motion.
About,
I'd like to make a motion to approve a fee in lieu of all open space per section 3.E2 of the subdivision regulations.
second.
Charlie.
go ahead.
due to the fact I don't believe that the open space meets the requirements that this town is looking for, open, accessible land to the public. I can't support the open space, but I would support a fee in lieu of all the open space, and we accept none of it.
I agree with Ken. I think that he stated at several meetings why it wouldn't be a good idea for the town to take this. And I think that we have other ways to get open space, and that money that comes in fee in lieu of goes into that fund for open space. So I agree with Ken.
But one of the, and this has been wrestling with, one of the things of the plan of development is that we will develop in a manner that preserves and enhances the aesthetic and the ecological values and natural resources, and limit development on steep slopes and wetlands and habitats and so forth, and access to these areas. And by not accepting some of these, and Lori, I think, on her proposal, did pull out a piece, we're limiting access to the Scannick and to the fishing areas and a lot of other things.
But how do you get to
I
it?
don't know how turning this over to a group of the property owners would maintain it either.
Well, what I'm looking at is, one, the accessibility that you talked about. You can't access the Scannick River from the back of this property. It's too steep.
Right, no, but
There's no parking. The town owns Memorial Park or Memorial Road right there, and that is already paved. It's already there. The town could put a nice parking lot down at the end and access the Scannick River. If the Conservation Commission chooses to approach this developer and buy, the bottom 100 feet, 200 feet, whatever they want along the Scannick River without purchasing the slope, they can do that at any time with this open space fund that they have. As far as, building on this slope, the town will never allow anything to be built on it or near it. So we don't have to worry about somebody doing something there. Because this commission has put restriction on, escarpments like that on State Street where they had to put 6-foot fences up with signage to prevent people from walking on this. So I think we've covered ourselves and we've set a precedence in the past where we don't have to worry about what you're saying, Charlie, but accepting a detention pond right at the entrance of this larger parcel and then having the other parcels scattered throughout.
That's what I'm wrestling
and one of
with,
them
that
isn't even in the
taking that
same
piece-
town.
Right.
It doesn't meet the definition
I think
at all in my eyes.
If we had, or if I had some knowledge that East Windsor was going to take that parcel and turn that into a park, which then would give an access to it, it would make it different. Well, that would change the whole idea, but for Enfield,
Can't vote depending on what some other
no,
town is going to
I
do,
know.
though.
Absolutely.
I know, that's the problem.
And I agree. I think that what we should do is look to the future in terms of buying any land that we think is going to be advantageous for the town to own to have continuity and connectivity along the Scantic River. But at this point, to absorb all that other liability associated with the detention basins and the slopes and escarpments, it seems that we're just taking in too much responsibility for very, very little benefit. So
There were grants that were just given out to some towns for some of this. It's too bad that wasn't available to us for this type of project too.
I also don't feel that it meets the open space definition the way we need
it doesn't.
to, and that the fee in lieu is something I think that
It wasn't
is
designed
beneficial.
toward-
So, just like Jenny said about how taking that money and having it in a fund, which we can then purposefully purchase land for open space, and that way it's utilized. And I think that is, in my mind, the best way to go with regards to the land
The
there.
open space wasn't designed, like some of them are landlocked, and it wasn't designed really to help the town or the people. It's more the development. And so basically, I do agree, it's worthless, but in some ways, they or we have violated their own development
the landlocked piece alone. Enfield just passed a very strong blight ordinance. How do we get back there and mow the grass?
That's it.
Can't. So,
And maintenance of any of this, because
Right.
there'll be no parking along the roads, even to have access to it. You can't, the people couldn't park in there.
Okay.
Ready to vote?
Okay, and again,
All in favor of
if you're in
accepting money
favor,
in lieu?
oh, yeah. So this is, if you vote yes, you're voting to take the money in lieu
read
of.
it one more time, please.
The motion on the table is to approve a fee in lieu of all open space per section 3.E2 of the subdivision regulations.
Fee in lieu.
Right. All in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. That one is 7-4 and 0-0. Get me out. Okay. Lori, what's next? The whole, well,
The whole package.
Excuse
whole
me.
package,
Motion to approve the special permit for an open space subdivision.
huh? I can't do it, though.
I know, we're just showing you what
Okay.
we're gonna do next.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the special permit for an open space subdivision.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion.
Charlie?
Ken?
I would just like to make a condition of approval that due to the designs, which were just denied, but just in case this passes, due to the design of the boulevards and stuff like that, that all sidewalks be put on all exterior roads, including Simon Road. So any interior lot can be exempt from sidewalks, but all the exterior lots have to have sidewalks all the way around that subdivision, because you can't cross the boulevard because there's a boulevard in the middle. So you need sidewalks on both sides
Just for text.
to protect the children trying to get to Simon Road for the bus, because, again, discussion was brought up about buses getting in the back of the subdivision. The children may have to walk out to Simon Road.
Well,
And,
they probably would be. If
Right.
if it went through, they would have to, you're right.
so I would ask that that be a condition of approval,
Is it a condition of approval or,
because the regulation says interior lots. And interior lots would end at nothing. They wouldn't get you to Simon Road.
but all lots within the development, you said would all,
Exterior lots.
okay,
You understand what I'm saying, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
all right. Just want to make sure. Now, is that a, I know, yeah. Well, that's what I would be for, yeah. Because we discussed the
Okay, well, she already wrote
Okay.
that as a condition if it passes, so.
so what's the condition that,
All
I
sidewalks instead of interior lots are to be
'Cause
put
we
on
haven't voted on the
exterior
whole
lots,
thing yet. Okay.
including Simon Road.
okay,
We got to vote on the condition?
I guess, yes.
Well, you got to get a consensus or something on that.
gotta know
I mean,
you're
if
adding
you
a
guys say no,
condition.
it doesn't matter what I say.
Oh, I'm glad that you brought it up. You know, what I just said earlier, walking, everybody's out walking,
Yeah,
and it's just a good thing to have the sidewalks. It's safer.
Yeah,
Just a
And our
consensus.
regulation says interior lots, which in this particular subdivision,
Would
it's
be
a
all
circle.
interior.
It goes to nothing.
Well, you know, that's a good point for when we look at the regs again.
Absolutely.
So we're all in agreement.
Well, no, I got a quick question. So the motion on the table is to approve the special permit for an open space subdivision. So basically, what we're saying is we're only voting whether this meets the special permit criteria for an open space subdivision. We're not discussing
Correct.
whether we're agreeing that this application before us is.
Right, you also, yes, so that's what you are doing now, and then you also have one more motion to accept the subdivision, open space subdivision. So the special permit is a zoning permit, the subdivision is,
Mine would be on the next one.
Fine.
Right, yeah, okay.
I'm trying to figure out where we're going with
I know,
that.
that's, okay.
All right.
So the motion is if this passes, that it has lots, lots, full lots.
As a comment, I think they got a nice project they developed, but they're just not meeting all the zoning rules.
Too many corners, yeah.
There's too many waivers still that they want to put it in. You can vote against it, but
Well,
For me,
you're voting on the sidewalks now.
no, the special permit to approve
the special permit.
an open space subdivision.
On this.
So first off, I don't believe
Well, how
that
are
there's
the
certain pieces that
sidewalks
do not
gonna be?
meet our open space subdivision.
But it is.
That's one of my concerns with regards to this. And the land, the way the land is, and the characteristics of that land, make it very, in my mind, difficult to have this be an open space subdivision and meet our requirements and our regulations.
So we're voting because an open space subdivision has to be a special permit. So if you forget the subdivision, are you okay with open space subdivisions or fee in lieu? The next vote is going to be on the particular subdivision, whether it meets. So we're trying to set a precedence, and this is what we either say yes to everybody or no to everybody, and we do accept open space subdivisions in this town.
We do if they meet the criteria that Mary read. I think that they made great strides from what I saw the first time. They've cut back on the number of lots. Everything looks lovely. My concern is those 5 items that they don't meet.
I didn't hear
There's
what you-
decision criteria that we have. Our standards are traffic access to and from existing streets, existing patterns of development, the likely impact on the availability and capacity of storm drainage systems and other utilities, the likely impact on natural environmental systems, and the presence of other land characteristics which favor the development of the parcel as a single-family open space subdivision. Those are our criteria. We take all the information that we have, and that's under 4.70 and M, I guess, under that. So that's 4.70.4 M. So if you want to look at that.
You have to decide whether you think they met all those conditions or not.
And I also believe that they do not meet all those conditions in terms of there are some conditions that we've already identified as being lacking, so that it would be difficult for me to vote for something that does not meet that criteria.
Okay, all in favor?
Okay, so this is a motion to approve the special permit for an open space subdivision. It's, this requires a vote of 5, not 4 this time. No, ma'am. It 5 out of 7, not 4. 4 normally is enough. All in favor? Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those
Abstain.
abstaining, 1 abstention.
Reasons?
The reason I'm abstaining is because I would really like to see the attorney's opinion on if it's not in the regulation, it's illegal. That'd be like saying if it's not a law, you can do whatever you want. I mean, I just.
Can I think of what the real meaning is if it's not allowed, you cannot do it. And I think
Boulevards are not allowed. They're not in the regulation. They don't exist.
Which would mean that they wouldn't be permitted.
correct. In terms of, there are certain things that you can no longer do, and they take them out of the code if you can no longer do it. In terms of, if you can't have a nuclear power plant in your backyard and you want to put one in there, you look at the zoning regulations and they'll say, well, there is no zoning regulation that allows you put a nuclear power plant in your backyard, so you cannot do it. Otherwise, there would be a regulation that says this is how you put a nuclear power plant in your backyard. That's an extreme example, but
Right.
that's
Yeah.
really what it is. It's in terms of it's either allowed in your regulations or it is not allowed.
I understand.
The
And
zoning regulations are permissive, so they list the permitted uses or the permitted designs. If it's not in there, then that means that
permitted.
it's not
So a
permitted.
new industry comes to light tomorrow. Brand new development. Who knows what it is? Google. Say it was Google 20 years ago. No such thing existed. And they came to us. We deny them because
That's where
They
you
would have to
amend
do a
your.
modification.
Yeah, in terms
You can
of
amend your
just
zoning
recently, there was a
regulations.
farmer's.
You amend the
you
zoning
can
reg-
amend the zone.
Yeah.
So that's why I want the
For like
legal
solar power.
opinion.
Think about the solar, where
You come
we
in.
amended and we.
But-
It has to be a special
You
permit, an
just had
open
some
meeting.
do
But
that.
I'm explaining why I'm abstaining, because I don't agree with that until I hear the town attorney's opinion on it. Because I would accept the boulevards. You guys denied it, but this is why I'm abstaining. If you are correct, I would deny it with you.
We just
I don't
had
know.
applications where we had to change the zoning so somebody could do that because we agreed with it.
Right.
Zone change before, not after.
So typically, you would go for a modification of the regulations, a text amendment, to allow that old Google, or the new
I
Google
just-
20
it
years
was the
ago.
only thing I could
Yeah.
think of, you know.
So, yeah.
But
Okay.
that's my reason for
We
abstaining.
got one more motion to go.
No,
Yep.
you got to give reasons for denial.
Yeah.
Charlie, you have to give reasons for denial.
Denial of,
That motion. you
The
just
special
made.
permit.
Oh.
I gave the reasons before I voted.
Each member has to.
Do we have to repeat them again?
You could say as stated previously, if you want to do
Well,
that.
I agree with what Mary read. I think that you have to be cautious on what is approved for the sake of the safety of the citizens. And I think that while it is a good idea, and they have improved it quite a bit since the first time, I think there's a little bit more area that they could tweak. That's my opinion.
And for me, what I previously stated, but also the fact that I think one of the issues is the availability and capacity of other utilities. We don't really know and know for sure about some of that, and there's been a lot of questions about that. And then the impact on the natural environmental systems. We have definitely some areas there that are very sensitive, and we want to be careful of that, as well as I don't believe the land characteristics support an open space subdivision just because of those escarpments that are there that we have, and that is a concern for me as well.
Yeah, I concur with the fact that they don't, it doesn't agree with the 5 requirements for open space development. And also, I don't think I approve it anyways because of the whole boulevard thing. I don't think that permitted length is even close to being able to get it fit any leeway in the regulations, so. That's why I'm voting no, or voted no. Charlie?
no, well, one is, the concern is enforcement of the protection for the escarpments and the difficulty in enforcing them. We've been through this with most of the discussion. The safety of the community down in that area. Kids, we talked, one thing was the school buses in and out. One way, no 2 ways into the development if you don't consider which we voted against, the boulevards. It's just, that's the reasons and the other, that I concur with the other commissioners, what they've said also.
I also concur with everything that's been said. I think there's an environmental issue here that I've got great concerns, so.
And as previously stated, I don't think that it meets the 5 requirements or, criteria that was laid out.
I abstained, yes. Due to a legal opinion over the boulevards.
So you have one more motion to go for this, the actual
Yes,
motion to
I
approve
have it
the
out here.
subdivision, open space
I covered
subdivision.
it out, no. The motion is to approve the application of Villages.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Public Hearing 2879, the application of the Villages LLC, known as Scantic Village, requesting a subdivision to allow 36-lot open space subdivision located off Simon Road, just north of East Windsor Enfield Town Line, map 69, parcel 296, in the R44 zone.
Second.
motion's made, seconded, discussion. This is a motion to approve if you vote, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, in terms of, I think that, you know, there's a numerous amount of, I guess, inconsistencies of the application with what our regulations require. I also have, again, requested information regarding, you know, how, you know, some of the escarpment soils are going to be treated during, you know, the excavations and, you know, the future, you know, runoff that is going to be associated with the detention basins. And, you know, I was never really given an adequate information that would alleviate some of my concerns. And most of my concerns are the fact that, you know, being an engineer and a designer, you never always have just a cookie cutter type of design that fits all conditions. And every time you have a varied condition, there's always certain condition, you know, certain things that have to be done in order to ensure that you don't have a lot of, you know, remedial work to stabilize things that aren't necessarily fully thought out. And I believe that, you know, I requested a significant amount of information and never got it. So, you know, that's another reason why, you know, I have an idea that, you know, this is not an acceptable application.
I agree also. I think that, as I said earlier, escarpments are very delicate. And once they fail big time and you can't fix them. So the town has gotten involved in the past in at least 2 that I know of, because I read the paper as a citizen, and I just worry that even though it isn't the town's, the town will end up with it somehow. So that's my concerns.
And for me, I think one of the biggest things is we were told that a lot of information was supposed to be put on the record and brought in from when we had a hearing, or we had an open application in the spring, and that was supposed to be added to the record. None of that information made it to us, nor did some of the information from the past that was asked to be included in the record. I have not seen any of that. That is a concern for me. I'm missing information that I think is important. And I think the other piece is the ingress-egress. It doesn't meet that requirement for me. Same thing with the design of the boulevard, the sensitive environmental issues that we have going on there. And I believe as well that the escarpment, you know, that being that sensitive issue, and not having adequate information to say whether those escarpments in the last 10 years have actually degraded, what's happened with them. We don't have accurate information with regards to that. And that's pretty much my reasons for saying that I just don't have enough information here completely to really say, you know, what I do have says I can't approve this, so.
I concur with the last 2 speakers, and I just don't think it was a good fit at this time, so. Charlie?
Again, my concern was protection of the escarpments. I still don't see, with the signage and fencing, how the enforcement, you'd almost have to be out there constantly to watch what they would do. Swimming pools at some of these are going to be rather difficult for a homeowner to even put out there. Some of them it would be limiting to, well, they are limited to sheds and other things, and enforcement would be almost a maze, and the office would be quite busy on inspections on where things can go and where they can't go. It's a sensitive area to work in, that I'm not satisfied with all the answers that we've gotten.
I have to agree with you. When somebody purchases a home and then be told they can't have a shed, they can't have a swimming pool, it's going to be almost impossible for anyone to monitor what goes on, especially in the no-build zones, to have people say, oh, I'm not going to let my kids go out in my backyard and play. So I really can't agree building that close to the escarpments at this time.
Rich?
I already said.
Yeah, he started.
The escarpments, due to the fact we're not accepting the open space, we're taking a fee in lieu, would not be a town problem. It's private property, and if the yard erodes and they lose their house because they didn't maintain it, that's the problem the town has, is the town accepted this wasted open space, which was escarpments, and it's town property now. This particular subdivision, we did not accept the open space. We were going to take the fee in lieu. I will be abstaining on this for the simple that if the town attorney says just because it's not in the regulations doesn't mean it can't go, I would be a yes on the subdivision. If he says that is correct, if it's not in the subdivision, therefore it's not allowed, then I would be a no on this subdivision. Without the answer, that is why I'm abstaining.
Go for a vote.
One of the things, whether it passes or doesn't, there was notations in there several places of the possibility of use of this area by previous inhabitants of the area, the Indian tribes, and it was suggested that the state archaeologists do some exploration down there. I think it would be beneficial to the town and to the owners of the property if they would contact the state to see if they would do some checking out to see the possibilities along those areas. I know I had a friend who had told me of a location where there had been not a fort, but buildings down along the Scandic. I don't know what location it was in. He never had the chance to take me down there, but he always offered. So there had been Indian activity down through that area, Native Americans activity in that area, and it would be, since it was suggested in something I read here, that the state go in there and take a look. It would be nice if the owners would allow that.
Okay. Call for a vote.
Okay, again, the vote is, I would check whether it's in a negative motion. Okay. All in favor of the approval of the subdivision? Those opposed? Abstentions? 601.
Okay, new business.
Okay, yep. Okay, now we're on a FID.
FLD.
FLD, yeah. I'm looking at it. Yeah, it looks like an L. FI. This is the applicant here. This is AAA. I don't know. Do we take the legal notice as a legal notice for the flood? What do we got on the legal notice?
Mr. Chair, the legal notice indicates it's public hearing 2929, so the FLD could be a public hearing, but it's not a real public hearing.
Okay. Take the roll for FLD 039.
Charles Durin.
Here.
Charles Ladd.
Here.
Nick Lefakis. Here. Mary Scott.
Here.
Virginia Higley.
Here.
Ken Nelson.
Here.
Linda DeGray.
Here.
And Richard Suzak's here.
Okay, is the applicant here?
Yep.
Please come forward, give your name and address. And,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry?
Will Commissioner Lefakis be sitting now, or?
He
Yes.
is, but he's a normal commissioner. And
Right.
Well, he
we
couldn't
took
sit
the
on the
roll.
last one because he came in
Right,
late, but he can sit on
right.
this.
So he's back on, and
He's back
and
on,
I just want to
right.
make sure who's
That's why I
voting.
didn't,
Okay.
sorry. Yes,
Before they start, I just wanted to remind you that I was on the Inland Wetlands Commission that approved the application. If you wish, I will recuse myself. I don't think that it's a problem, but I'm giving you that option.
I don't think that's a problem.
Thank you.
please take note of that. Oh, our tech is. Well, Lori, do you want a motion to include this in this part, to include it as part of the final 2927? 29, I'm sorry, 2929.
There are two different applications. This is for the the
Right.
flood regulations.
Yep.
The other one is for site plan approval.
Right, but can we?
So you should take action on them
include-
separately.
They may cover material that
Oh,
we're
you-
going to ask, and I want.
You could do that, yeah.
I would like a motion to include whatever goes on in,
But that's
the
a public hearing,
FLD.
this isn't.
I know that, but
So he,
I know what you're saying.
I want anything done here included, what they say
so what
in,
he's saying is that,
in the minutes for, this is what we always do.
So we don't have to do it twice.
That's right. Otherwise, I'll have to do the same stuff on the next.
so if you'd like to hear them
So I'd
together,
like-
you need to open the public hearing, but you need to take two separate motions, one for the FL 39.
But I want the testimony or the information.
That's what I'm saying, but you need to open the public hearing up in order for that to happen. Because
All right, well, then the motion's not later, but then it's got to be included. All right,
I'll make that motion when we start.
all right, fine. Okay, all right. Okay, welcome. Please, names and addresses.
You can use that mic too.
Make sure that red light is on.
I believe it is. Hi, my name is Jessica Bates. I'm a senior engineer with BL Companies. I'm here with my coworker, Matt Bruton from BL Companies, and Ryan Doherty from...
Progressive AE from Charlotte, North Carolina.
and-
Welcome to Connecticut.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Time for the storm.
Hopefully I'll make it back before the storm hits. We'll see.
Okay,
Hi, my name is Jessica Bates. I'm senior engineer. I'm here to talk about the AAA proposed retail building at 25 Hazard Ave. It's a 33-acre parcel in the Zone Business Regional, BR. It currently houses Aldi, Chick-fil-A, Red Robin, Marshall's, Michael's, Ocean State, and then has out parcels for Plaza Azteca as well as Olive Garden. The site is currently developed. It is bound to the south by Hazard Ave, to the east by Freshwater Boulevard, to the north by Freshwater Brook, to the west by Motel 6. This is not near any mapped areas on the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection National Diversity Database mapping, and it is not in an aquifer protection zone. It is in the FEMA floodplain for both X and AE, so it has elevations associated to the 100-year flood elevations. The area of the site that's going to be developed is currently a vacant parking lot that was previously used as a commuter parking area, but hasn't for quite a few years, from what I understand. The proposed building is for the 10,700 square foot office, retail, and automotive bay building. The bays will do oil changes, tire rotations, brakes, heating, cooling repair, very minor automotive repair, nothing major for that. And the retail establishment will do travel services, passport, and travel-related sales of things like that, like AAA's typically handle. The core business hours are not yet final, but they're anticipated to be from 7:30 in the morning to 4:ish. I'm sorry, 7:30 in the morning to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 7:30 to 4 on Saturdays. Sundays hours are not yet determined at this time. There are no proposed above-ground or underground tanks as part of this development, and there are existing site utilities on site that we will be utilizing for this building, including water, sanitary, gas, electric, and telephone services. All LED lights in the parking lot will be full cutoff with dark skies compliant, and the stormwater management system will tie into the existing stormwater drainage system in the parking lot and discharge to Freshwater Brook. There is a decrease in the impervious cover as part of this development. We are increasing the parking lot islands and the landscaping in the area, so there is a decrease in the peak flow going to Freshwater Brook as part of this. All of the entire development complies with the 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual, as well as the 2002 Sediment and Erosion Control Manual. The stormwater components will include catch basins with deep sumps and hoods, an hydrodynamic separator for the area of the parking lot that we're modifying prior to discharge into the existing stormwater system. As I stated, there is a floodplain associated with this parking lot area, and the floodplain elevation is currently at 114.75. As such, we propose to have our building finished floor elevation at 115.75, so 1 foot above the base flood elevation, which then creates compensatory storage issues because we're now filling in the floodplain. So in order to maintain the zero increase of water surface elevation of Freshwater Brook, because it has a floodplain associated with it, we are proposing compensatory storage of both the parking lot area that is currently paved. We're going to drop that, and we're going to use the hydraulic piping system that currently exists on site to create subsurface chambers kind of up near Chick-fil-A, closer to Hazard Ave, that will flood and take backwater in the event of a flooding event of the 100-year storm. By using these two things, both lowering of the parking lot and the chambers, there will be a zero water surface elevation increase as part of this development. And that's mine, if you have any questions.
Charlie,
Go ahead.
what is the current water table there?
The water table was believed to be the flood groundwater table.
Yep.
It's on the higher side.
Right. So do you have the number? Because currently the floodplain's at 114. What is the water table right now? You're talking about putting a lot of underground storage for the water.
The system's wrapped in an impermeable fabric, as is the one that's for Chick-fil-A right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so no groundwater can go in. It's not going to act like a well point and start to discharge groundwater out through Freshwater Brook. So it won't have an infiltration and, issue in that regard, because it's going to sit, they're concrete chambers and they sit in an impermeable layer of fabric.
Mm-hmm. And you had said there's no storage tanks on the premises?
No, we're not proposing above
Okay.
or underground storage.
Above or underground?
Right.
Where are you going to put the oil for the oil changes?
So I think what she's referencing, there's no site tanks on site. Inside the building, we do have 5 tanks that range in size from 200 to 400 gallons. They are in a containment area inside the service garage, and they are double wall UL 142 listed tanks.
Okay. The concern is, when I was first elected to the council in 2005, my first meeting, this chamber was full of people whose houses were buried underwater. That parking lot you're talking about, cars were 4 feet underwater in that parking lot. 91 was closed down because it flooded. And it all happened because of this bridge right here on Route 5 that's on a state road that the state has refused to do anything with. So this particular property is a huge part of the floodplain, which isn't big enough at this point until they fix this bridge. So it's not if it's going to flood again, it's when it's going to flood again. And you had mentioned your hours. You know, you haven't really established them yet. Isn't AAA a big tower? You tow 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
AAA does support towing. There's no towing fleet services out of this facility. We are just a service, light automotive service garage. So if someone breaks down and elects to have their car towed there, then that can happen. But we are not, we don't maintain a fleet of tow vehicles that are towing to this facility.
Right, but a AAA customer calls you.
Sure.
To tow their car because the alternator crapped out.
Right.
Small repair. Your drivers aren't going to take that vehicle or attempt to try to take that vehicle back to your shop.
And we'll take it wherever they ask us to take it. If they don't have a shop, then we'll recommend to take it to the shop. Correct.
Right. And who would be responsible if that parking lot floods while the customers' cars are sitting there waiting to be worked on? Because that was the commuter lot, and there were people waiting or left their cars in that lot that went underwater. I just see it as, you know, insurance prices are high enough when this floods, which it's going to do until they do something with this road. That is a major flood area right there. Of all places in town, I don't know, I don't understand why, but I'm concerned about the traffic going in and out of there. We had, you know, another business come a while ago. People were very concerned, including the police department, about all the traffic from Costco all the way to Hazard Avenue. And I believe there's some notes from the police department about this particular one that should be addressed. But that's more towards your other hearing if this passes. But I have major concerns about the flooding that happens in this parking lot.
Just to clarify, Mr. Nelson, we are raising the grade of this building and the surrounding property. Jess can point out on the map with the pointer here so you can see it on your screen. We're actually raising quite a few feet to bring it out of that because of this problem. No one wants to build a business that floods. It's not, you know, prudent on anyone's case, including the parking lot that surrounds this building is also raised up as well to mitigate that problem. So there is a retaining wall, around two sides of the building, as Jess is showing you with the pointer there. That does raise this section of the parking lot around the building to avoid that problem.
I understand, and you come out to a zero. So you're not making the situation any better than what it is right there. You're only taking care of your particular site and how much water can actually be held in those underground systems you're putting in.
The fill that we're providing here to raise the parking lot and building above the 1 foot above the floodplain elevation is 124,000 cubic feet. Mm-hmm. We're providing 127,000 cubic feet.
So
it's obviously not a private problem with just this development. It's more of a regional problem. So we can only do what we can do in terms of our development.
No,
Obviously,
no.
you mentioned DOT, and we're aware of that problem as well. We've worked on this.
The development, I'm all for it. Find another site, I like it. But when you're building on something that's a problem for this town, and it affects so many people upstream and downstream, including the health and safety of people who run up and down 91, going to the hospitals. When 91's closed down, Enfield becomes a gridlock trying to go up and down these roads. And, you know, this is right smack dab in the middle of that floodplain. And
Right.
I just have big concerns.
Just to reiterate, our development won't make that situation worse. But it obviously is not solving the problem. There's greater powers that be in other areas that could fix this problem. Our development, though, will not make that worse. We're providing more than enough compensatory storage to maintain the level that currently exists today.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
The more I read the 14 pages, the more confused I got. I really water holding on page 5 of 14 and encroachments, because if I it says you can't fill in or make less area. Floodplain. And on the next page, 6 of 14. Sorry, on the next page, 6 of 14, table 7 shows you're filling in the floodplain. So are you compensating for how you're filling in?
Yes.
Or what you're filling in?
We will be compensating for what we're filling in. So we're filling in approximately 124,000 cubic feet. That's the bottom number under total fill in the floodplain. So this is the Chick-fil-A site as well as the AAA. So Chick-fil-A was kind of over-designed when it was put in to over-mitigate for the little bit of fill in the floodplain they did. And then AAA is utilizing that excess they had and then expanding upon it for the fill that AAA is proposing. But all totaled, those two developments together are about 124,000 cubic feet of fill in the floodplain. As part of this development, to counterbalance that, we're going to create 127,000 cubic feet of voids in the floodplain to make sure there's no, it's seen at the same elevation, at the same location.
What's a void?
A hole.
Oh.
Open space, so
Okay.
we're cutting in the floodplain. So yes, we're filling 124,000 cubic feet, but we're cutting 127,000 cubic feet. So we're actually giving the community back about 3,000 cubic feet of area in the floodplain that could be used to solve the flooding issue.
Okay, thank you.
Jenny, that goes to where I wanted to know what the water table is. Because if I'm correct, the water table's about a foot below the parking lot. So you can't cut too much and you're already into the water. So you're not creating any storage, you know, unless they were to create it in the area that they're filling, which would make no sense.
Right.
That's my concern. I would really want to see that water table number.
The groundwater table is independent of the base flood elevation of 100-year floodplain capacity.
Right, but you're building storage tanks.
But we're wrapping that in an impermeable fabric, so it won't be filled by the groundwater. That's going
But
to
you're
be wrapped.
displacing the groundwater where you're putting those tanks. You're digging a hole, and you're moving that water out of that area.
True.
Correct? Okay, thank you.
The only comment that I would make is that if they did put a tank underwater and it wasn't ballasted, it would float. So basically, you know, the proof would be in the pudding in terms of, you know, because I'm just looking at the grades that you do have and, you know, trying to determine, because I believe there's a geotechnical report that was available for our review.
Yes.
Do we have that here? Could I take a look at that? Because we can determine exactly where the groundwater table is if there is a geotechnical report.
While we're at that, I'm reading some notes from the department. I believe it's Developmental Services. It states on page 7 that you did not provide the calculations that would demonstrate the encroachment standard for flood levels is at 0.00, and the planning staff would recommend that the calculations are provided as either as a condition of approval, but I think it leads to what Kenny had asked, that you provide the calculations.
I mean, yes, we provided the compensatory storage calculations that in essence show a 0.0 foot increase in the floodplain. We can also provide a separate model backing up those calculations to prove that as well.
It's okay.
Mr. Chair? Because basically there's 5 borings that they took in the footprint of the building. The borings are all basically at elevation 112. And the observed groundwater at 0 time, it was at -5 feet below the finished floor, so that, or below finished grade, so that would make the groundwater table at 107. So And again, that's at 0 time, you know, it would fluctuate, and it actually moves depending on the permeability of the soils and everything, but, you know, at the boring logs indicate somewhere around 7, so obviously during high groundwater, you know, the spring it'd be probably a lot higher, because these were taken in, I don't know what date it was. Oh, March.
What is the existing grade
The
of the parking
The
lot?
existing grade is 12.
No, just to get, it varies. Just to give you context, you said groundwater 107. The parking lot on the low side, which faces Gale Toyota and Freshwater, the wetlands back there, that's about 107, or no, sorry, 109, so 2 feet above. As you come back towards Olive Garden, it climbs to 110, 112, and when you get to the parking lot behind Olive Garden, we're around 113, 114 as it climbs up towards Hazard Ave. So in the worst case scenario, in March, which is typically a high groundwater time, we have 2 feet of separation. As you come closer to the actual building, we have more. Never mind the fact that we're raising this up significantly to get it out of the floodplain. So it's, you know, we're
Building wouldn't be an issue.
right. The building and the foundation in groundwater wouldn't be an issue. And
Yeah.
the chambers that we're proposing aren't in this parking lot. They're next to Chick-fil-A, which is higher up in the profile.
Right, yeah, and the finished grade there is about 115, I did take a look at that. And the finished floor that you're proposing is at 115, so basically.
115.75.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, blah, blah, blah. But,
Come on, give me those 9 inches.
but, you know, and again, you know, obviously it will get higher, you know, as, you know, there are rain events and things are going on, but normally the March is kind of a wet time, so.
Right. And to go back to a point that was made earlier about buoyancy, obviously we don't want things popping out of the ground, right? That doesn't go good for anybody. The systems that are, you know, proposed here are storm trap. They're precast concrete chambers. They're quite heavy. Buoyancy calcs are done to make sure they stay in the ground and do what they're supposed to do. That's what Chick-fil-A has built. I haven't seen them pop out of the ground yet, knock on wood, but that's the goal, is to expand upon that system in that area to provide this compensatory storage. So it's a proven system. Groundwater and buoyancy are taken into account. You know, that's more of a construction detail when you get to that level, but those things aren't ignored.
Okay, come on, I want to come back a little bit to comments from the Developmental Service. 42-81 section of the regulations are anchoring, and the recommendations of section 4281, new construction and improvements be constructed with materials and utility equipment resistant to flood damage. All new construction substantial improvements shall be constructed using methods and practices that minimize flood damage. All new construction and substantial improvements be constructed with electrical, heating, ventilating, plumbing, air conditioning equipment, and other service facilities that are designed and or located so as to prevent water from entering or accumulating with components during conditions of flooding. And these would be put on the conditions of approval if they aren't there now.
And Mr. Chairman, as I understand those comments, as they're provided by the staff, were in relation if we were below the floodplain level. Is that correct?
I was looking for the documentation just stating that, you know, the
That we are
construction would
above.
be like that, and I didn't see anything. I spoke with the principal engineer, and you guys.
Documentation that we were above the floodplain level, or
No,
that we
no,
would
that
comply
the
with these?
construction material methods, those three
In
things
other
that
words,
Charlie read,
Yeah.
were just kind of out.
Sure, and certainly, again, that's a constructability issue that would be added to our documents, and we could add that as a condition tonight.
Yeah, that's,
I just want to state that I agree with Ken in terms of, I remember when that area flooded and the water was significantly high. Crandall Brook, the boulevard, the entire street was closed down there. And again, unfortunately, I'm not sure exactly what grade, there is a little dip in the road there which could have collected some water, obviously, what
Well, Cranbrook was closed too.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. And as and again, we would have to rely on your expertise that, the elevation given is that you're putting this building is significantly higher than, the surrounding areas. And I think that, if that is indeed the case, then, I think that I could support this if indeed we can sort of document the fact that, the area of Crandall Brook Boulevard that did flood is substantially lower than we are here, because there was a lot of water. There was definitely a lot of water in that area.
Right. So, the design documents that we have provided, obviously, are provided by a licensed surveyor in the state of Connecticut. So we're confident on the surrounding areas, topography. The design plans on the civil side are stamped by a Connecticut professional engineer. Obviously, we can do a double calculation to provide, as mentioned, as a condition of approval from the staff report that would piggyback on top of our compensatory storage calculation that's already been provided. We don't obviously want a building or a parking lot that floods, nor does AAA, nor does the insurance company, nor does the citizens of this town that are along this brook as well. So
the bottom of your parking lot is definitely going to flood because
definitely
it
is.
That's at elevation
it
11
today,
and 12.
Yes.
So basically, that's a given in terms of hopefully nobody parks there, and possibly I'm not sure what kind of an alert or notification would be given to anybody who was parking there during one of these severe events.
Are you aware of anything that happened when this was used as a commuter parking lot with the bus stop?
Well, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying, obviously,
got
we're
wet.
raising this up to keep those parking spaces out of it, but previously, is the town aware of any alert system that was in place when that happened?
Oh, I don't doubt if there was.
Unless you count the cars floating down Cranbrook Boulevard.
That's the only other.
Yeah, that's the only alert we had.
So I was just looking, the Bob's stores and the other finished floor elevations are at 113.78, and they're proposing their store to be at 115.75. So the finished floor elevation of the proposed building is actually going to be higher than the other structures on the site.
Just for interest, you might want to go back. There were buildings that, well, Charlie and I were on, Nick was too. There was another proposal for this area I don't know if it was several years back, 2 or 3 years back.
I think that was a men's clothing store, and that was going to be attached to Bob's.
Right. They were attaching it to Bob's, but I don't know the elevations or anything went on there, but the location was a little bit different, and I don't know what they had done for flood, help with the flooding area.
Was that approved?
Yes.
Just not built? Okay.
Well, it never got built. Well, it was at the time when I guess things weren't being built too many of them.
Yeah, economic downturn, yeah.
So there were other proposals for this area that were approved. I don't know. It seems to me also there was another one, but it was back. I don't.
There was a very big health club, and I wasn't sitting on the board then, but if I remember correctly, that health club was going to go right on the other side of Bob's, but it was so big there wasn't enough parking to take
Well,
care
that
of
might
it.
have been on the planning and never made it down here then. I don't know.
No, I think you heard it. I think Lori Longy was on then. I don't know. I think, though, as the gentleman said, they have to adhere to certain standards, and if they didn't, the insurance company, it's an act of God, so they're going to lose everything if they don't build it correctly. So I think the incentive is to build it correctly.
Absolutely.
I have a question for Lori. Lori, that approval for Bob's, is that expired yet? Or could they still build? You'd have to look that up.
I'm sorry, the approval for Bob's?
Well,
For the addition, for the clothing
Oh,
store attached to Bob's.
my guess is that it expired unless they got extensions,
Well, they,
which doesn't sound like it did,
if they're
so.
approved like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, they
Yeah,
might still
it's
be able to
probably,
build.
it's probably expired then, most likely.
I was wondering if you could check and see if it has. Because we wouldn't want them deciding they can build now when they're putting this in.
I think that
So
it's
I can maybe
expired.
add a little bit to that. So we're here on behalf of AAA, obviously, who's the tenant, but their landlord is Paramount Realty, who owns this entire plaza. We have done sketches previously, not me and Jess personally, but our company has years ago. As far as I know, they are not pursuing anything adding to Bob's
Right.
precisely for some of the reasons that we've stated here tonight. A big fitness club or a men's warehouse. Men's warehouse is across the street, but a big fitness club of similar size and elevation to Bob's would be a huge footprint in the floodplain, and the amount of compensatory storage needed to justify that isn't available on site. So as far as I know from the landlord, they're not pursuing adding on to the existing strip center.
Just don't like to do overlapping approvals.
No, I understand, yeah.
okay.
Actually, is this even a legal use in that zone? Enfield Ford's addition was grandfathered.
We're on just the floodplain now, not the actual application, right?
You're on the flood.
Whoa.
Yeah, this is just flood, but yes, it is.
We didn't do
It is
both?
permitted.
No, we didn't make a motion.
Okay, what? Make a motion if you want. I don't know if anybody else wants to ask a question or anything concerning the floodplain. Oh, okay, that's what you're waiting for.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the flood FDL 039 resolution for, the construction of an 11,000 square foot AAA building, including, some new business services and 8 service bays and a driving school at 25 Hazard Avenue, as indicated in the draft resolution provided in our packet of December 20th.
Second. Oh, sorry.
Motion's made and seconded. Just as a reminder, this is past inland wetlands, and November 13th, I believe, is the date that it went through wetlands. Motion's on the table. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You guys can answer to every one of the neighbors who flood out. You just allowed something to be built in a major problem area. I am a no, 100%.
Okay, 6-4, 1 against. Okay, moving along. Motion to, I'm sorry. Yeah, public hearing 2929. Please read the legal notice and take the roll.
The Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, December 20th at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, concerning the following application. Public hearing 2929, 25 Hazard Avenue, special permit application for a proposed American Automotive Association building containing 11,000 square feet of business offices and 4,900 square feet of business service area and 6,100 square feet containing 8 vehicle bays for repair. AAA Club Alliance Incorporated applicant, Paramount Realty Services, Inc., owner, map 45, lot 8, business regional BR zone, dated this 8th day of November 2018. Charles Duran.
Here.
Charles Ladd.
Here.
Nick Lefakis.
Here.
Mary Scott.
Here.
Virginia Higley.
Here.
Ken Nelson.
Here.
Linda DeGray.
Here.
And Richard Suzak is here.
Okay, motion to take testimony from,
Mr. Chair, I'll also make a motion that we take the testimony as occurred in FLP 39 to be included in our public hearing 2929.
Second.
motion's made and seconded. All in favor? Unanimous, 7-0-0. All right, again, just for our secretary's names and addresses.
My name is Jessica Bates. I'm a senior engineer with BL Companies. This is Matt Bruton. He's an engineer with BL Companies. And
Ryan Darty with Progressive A, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay,
again,
yeah.
hi.
Wherever you want to start on this one.
My name is Jessica Bates. I'm a senior engineer with BL Companies. I'm here to talk to you about the proposed AAA auto care building at 25 Hazard Ave. It's a 33-acre building at the Business Regional District, BR. Infield Commons currently is housed on the site, and it has the Aldi's, Chick-fil-A, Red Robin, and other buildings, including the Plaza Azteca out parcel and the Olive Garden out parcel. As we know, this building is, is bound by Hazard Ave to the north, Freshwater Boulevard to the east, Freshwater Brook to the north, and Motel 6 to the west. There's no mapped NDDB hits, and it's not in an aquifer protection district. The building, as we have proposed, is no variances for zoning, and we meet all parking requirements as set forth in the zoning requirements. There's a main entrance building for pedestrians that's closer to the main drive aisle, and there's garage bay doors that are further to the north that are accessed on both the east and west sides. There's no access on the south or north sides of the building at all, and it's just the other things. There's garage doors that will have automotive uses going into them, and there is a dumpster enclosure to the west of the building, closer to where the retaining wall is on the Bob side of the existing building. As stated previously, we're going to be fed by utilities that are currently existing in the shopping plaza for all things, and we are conforming to the 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual and the 2002 Erosion and Sedimentation Control Manual. Anyone has any questions for us?
No, I mean,
Would you like to hear from the architect before you ask questions, or would you like to ask questions based on the
well,
site
whatever.
first?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Material
So,
sample board is actually right next to Ken, so for what he's describing, you'll be able to see it.
thank you. So we have the elevations up on the screen here, and you'll see the building is
Well,
predominantly
one
brick.
thing that people are watching, you're on local TV.
Okay.
So everybody in town is either listening or watching.
All right,
So it would be to your advantage if you have the sketches and drawings to put them on
It's
the
on the
easel.
TV.
It's on the TV, okay. I didn't know you were connected. Well, we couldn't see it because it wasn't, now it is. All right.
Well,
that's-
now the pressure's on. Now that I know that the whole town's watching.
Oh, yeah.
So the building, as you see, is predominantly brick. We have a main field color brick as well as an accent brick that's anchored with a water table and a water table projecting detail, which goes around the entire base of the building underneath the storefront windows. The storefront windows are clear glazing with a anodized bronze finish to them. We have EIFS accents above the glazing and above the overhead doors. The building is a flat roof structure with a parapeted roof, and as you'll see on the east elevation, the main customer entrance is accented with a composite metal panel system, which faces, again, the east there. That's Freshwater, correct, thank you. The rear of the building is on the north elevation, and that's also the brick two tones with the main field color and the accent. The south elevation is predominantly glass storefront with the brick and EIFS accents. Behind that storefront is where the business services are located. If we want to flip to the plan real quick, I'll walk through that. Thank you. So the rear part of the building is obviously the automotive service. We have 8 bays and the oil storage, a small amount of tire storage, and the equipment located between the 2 rows of bays. The front portion of the building houses the business services, which includes our travel, insurance services, travel packages, and the driving school, which is in the bottom right corner of this plan. There's also some ancillary spaces for support of the business operations.
Do you have a parking study on the entire property? Because over the last, they did, and it still has adequate parking after adding Red Robin, Chick-fil-A, Petco.
Mr. Nelson, on page OP1 of our plan set, which is an overall plan of the entire parcel, including the strip and the out parcel buildings, we have a comprehensive parking table, including all those uses, also including the Plaza Azteca parcel and also the Olive Garden parcel, because as this was originally designed, these were all lumped together. Obviously, there's kind of a shared parking agreement between all uses, so those were also calculated. We were required to have 1,159 parking spaces. Total proposed is 1,418. So we're in excess of 200-something parking spaces.
Okay. And then how are you going to address the traffic concerns that the police department has coming out on the Freshwater?
Do you want to flick to the site plan? So I'll take a step and talk about the traffic memo that was submitted, and then I'll kind of come back to your question. So if anyone's had a chance to read the overview, it was done by our traffic engineer. He takes into account the entire plaza. This plaza actually has an OSTA certificate because of the square footage and the number of parking spaces. The addition of more square footage will trigger us to go back to OSTA as well. So we will be applying for an administrative decision for to incorporate this new square footage into this. Daily trip counts for Hazard Ave are approximately 25,000 to 26,000 daily trips, with Freshwater Boulevard just under 13,000. This is kind of a unique use, as it's combined auto use with the garages and the retail use of the passport services that people come to expect. I'm sure you guys have all visited the old AAA location in the Best Buy Plaza. We've previously designed and got approved a similar footprint in Southington, Connecticut. Hasn't been built yet. Same prototype, same configuration. So the traffic calculations that we did for that were accepted by the state, and that's what we presented in our record that was given to the town. So the estimated trips for this facility would be about 10,000 monthly trips. So that is 5,000 cars in, 5,000 cars out. In terms of that compared to the surrounding streets, there's 750,000 trips on Hazard Ave in a month and 387,000 on Freshwater Boulevard. That equates to between 1% and 2% would be coming to this location. So it's a real small drop in the bucket compared to the surrounding area. In terms of the peak trips, so that's usually the busy times of a retail spot, our traffic engineer determined about 35 peak trips. So that's about 17 cars in that 2 to 3 hour window. Typically for retail, that's PM peak, so like after work, 4 to 6 during the busy, after work commute, and Saturday AMs when people are out doing shopping and errands on a weekend. In terms of the driveway orientation and the placement of this building, I kind of want to show you why we placed the building where we placed it. As you all know, it's a vacant parking lot. It's underutilized since it hasn't been used as a commuter bus parking lot. Obviously, there's a floodplain issue that we've discussed already. So the placement of the building was done for several reasons. There's obviously internal parking lots and drive aisles that we wanted to maintain. This is for circulation with all the other buildings, truck routes for the other tenants on the plaza, and also to maintain as much parking spaces as possible. As you know, we have excess of 200. We obviously want to keep that as stores get busier. You don't want to lose parking spaces. That's never a goal of a retail business. In terms of why the building was placed high towards this driveway that accesses this light, obviously the floodplain and the slope dips as you go towards Freshwater Boulevard or Freshwater Brook, and that's closer to the wetland. We obviously don't want to have a car use with potential contaminants closer to the wetland. We also don't want to push this deeper into the floodplain, exacerbating the problem of compensatory storage. So it was kept away from the wetland and further out of the floodplain as humanly possible, while also maintaining the existing drive aisles that were there. Now it is a stop-controlled intersection that we're proposing where our building corner is, and the intersection at Freshwater Boulevard is a traffic signal controlled. Those two devices provide brakes and traffic for cars to leave, taking a left or taking a right. Right now, this one driveway that's the closest to Freshwater Boulevard is the main concern from police and town staff. That is one of 3 exits around this building. As you remember, we are putting a retaining wall on the other 2 sides to keep us out of the floodplain. So the functionality of their operations and the existing plaza, we want to maintain as much possible routes for customers and employees to exit the surrounding area. There is obviously a queue at that intersection during busy times. Jess took a trip down to this plaza on Black Friday. We had the day off, and Sunday, and took some pictures. It was around 1:30 in the afternoon that day, and we saw 3 cars blocked up at that point, which obviously would preclude a car from turning left out of our driveway. In that situation, obviously you're not going to pull out. You can't pull out. There's nowhere to go. But they cycled pretty quickly and went from 3 to 1 to none. So there is the ability to take a left out of this. If there's not, there's plenty of routes to access deeper into the plaza to access Hazard Ave. So it's not a problem where it's going to queue up and queue up and queue up further and block the service bays of our store. So the ability, it's kind of a self-regulating internal driveway. If you can't take a left, you're going to take a right. And it is an internal driveway. There are 4 curb cuts across this lane for the back of Olive Garden Plaza Azteca and the Ocean State Job Lot building. So we're not adding a new curb cut. We're maintaining the one that is there. We do believe that it serves a functionality not only for this future business, but for the existing tenants that are in there. And with the stop sign and the signal that's at the intersection, there is the ability for cars to safely
Wait, I have a quick question.
leave.
Well, let Kenny finish, I don't know.
She can go on.
I go down that road a lot of times, and you see when you take a look at the on the plan that there's a huge dip, and you see where that dip is.
Are you talking about Freshwater Boulevard?
No, we're talking about that side road where there is a dip that drops, and so I know that it's actually very dangerous through there because cars like to come through there, and you can't, if people are going too fast, you'll bottom out your car because of that drop. So is that going to be mitigated in some way? What is it? You see it. It drops from 112 to 111, 7.75, and that drop in the road, it literally is a hazard in its own way. And if you're going to put that much traffic in there and you're going to be doing certain things, I'm wondering how is that going to be staying the same, and how, because to me that is a little bit of a hazard in that area.
It's at back of the back side of
Yes,
the
it's,
state.
yep, exactly.
We'll point it out on the map I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's where the catch basins are. No, further down. Yeah, in that area, right?
Yeah,
Can you see it
it's
on
like,
the screen?
you see, where it drops, 111.75, and everywhere else it goes up.
Yeah.
As you get towards the light. But yeah, you see it if you're on that road, you can't miss that it drops.
It's actually the low point of that driveway. There's catch basins there, so there's obviously has to be a low point. We are regrading and repaving that, so it should be a smoother transition than is there today.
Yeah, because
and
literally.
the pavement, I grew up in town. I visit this plaza all the time.
Yeah.
It's obviously not the best pavement at the moment, so that portion will be reconstructed up to the corner where Bob's is.
Okay.
Worried it was going to wash out.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the thing too, is that, you know, if you're going to put traffic on there more than there already is, it's important that it be a safe way to navigate through there, and that has been a concern for me. I don't like to always travel on that backside just because of that when you're trying to get through there. And again, they only recently put that light in and put in the turn signals and all that stuff, and so thankfully they did that. But like, the concern being the queuing up, trying to take a left out of there. I mean, you already have stop signs at Ocean State. One here if you're coming down and around the corner. You have one here, and you have traffic coming in, and that stop sign is back by Bob. So you literally have a stop sign that is, and a stop sign over here, and it's all a mess in there. It's really
right at that area. There's
yeah,
three stop signs. You have one coming that goes west out in front of Bob's.
Yep. And so I think it's really important that that be redesigned so we, you know, it's.
You're talking about the intersection as you go towards between Bob's and Ocean State job lot.
Yeah, all that right around there is really gets convoluted in there.
There's three stop signs.
Yeah, it's a whole mess in there. So I really think too, if you're going to be putting a lot of traffic on the backside here, that's got to all get redone and set up a certain way, because it really does get very, very different.
So
back in this area.
AAA obviously has an agreement with the landlord for a certain area on this plaza. I do know we do work with the landlord, Paramount Realty, on other projects, including this parcel. So I can bring up, I think it's outside of AAA's kind of purview of work that they're allowed to do, but I can definitely bring that up as a concern from the board. I've
Yes,
live
absolutely.
In town, and I know the situation you're talking about.
Yeah, circulation being an important piece, especially when you're adding traffic.
study, I think you realize that most people that would be on the north side are going to use that left turn, because nobody's going to go north out onto Hazard Avenue and then come back. I think you're going to have a lot of people going out that exit.
Mr. Chair, just to couple back to Mr. Nelson's concern in terms of the queuing coming out of that.
Well, that's what I was addressing.
That north side. In terms of, is there any possibility that instead of having a two-lane road on that east side of the building, where I guess that's where you would enter the service base, that you just continue going north, and then you either double around the entire situations. Because right now you got 2 lanes out of each entrance into the your particular area, and there's 2 entrances. So if they went around the building and came out on the west side, they'd be further away from the light, and they can get out a lot easier into the queue for the light, rather than trying to get out on the east side when you're too close to the light, and then all of a sudden people start getting edgy when they can't get out. They start running lights, and they start doing crazy things because they've been waiting there for 3 times and nobody let them out. But, again, if you prevented that kind of thing just by maintaining a one-way traffic lane on that east side, and then having everybody go around, towards, the west side of the building to get out into that drive area.
So the functionality from the architect is that the bays that are on both sides of the building, you enter in and you reverse out from the same door. It's not, you're not passing through the building like a car wash. So there's a little bit of restriction of having people come in through one side and leave on the other. That's not how it works internally.
But I guess what I'm saying is when they back out, they can go north instead of going south when they're backing out on the east bays. Because basically that's really what. I guess there's going to be quite a bit of that's where your main entrance is for your service area too. But if everybody's congregating on that east side, and that's where the queuing for all the lights is happening, and everybody's sort of getting out of that area, the way that you alleviate that is just make everybody go around to the west side of the building, and they're 15 cars up from the queuing line, and everybody gets right in.
Yep. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think. AAA obviously wants the functionality for customers to make that choice, and obviously if there is a queue, the choice is made for them. They'll have to take a right and go deeper into the plaza to pick another exit out of the parcel. So that at the time they really don't want to make that a one-way access way for their building.
So I guess the question is, you're discussing, Rich, if you're on Fresh and you're heading towards Hazard Ave, and you take that right turn in, correct? And then you take the immediate right into the AA building there.
Right.
Why can that not be a one-way? The other side be a two-way, but that area there, that forces anybody who's coming in to turn if they want to turn in there, but it keeps people from sitting, like trying to get out there of that bay. And if they want to go, they can go around the building. But then if they want to go in, they can just go down a little further and take the right turn in there too. So, either way, you're allowing them two different options, but you're keeping that traffic from queuing up at that entrance here where people are trying to take that left out. I think that that's a smarter idea to do, just to alleviate, because if somebody's trying to take a left out of there, think about it this way. You're on Freshwater and you're heading towards Hazard. Somebody tries to take that turn, that right turn into the little road here, and somebody's queued up at the light and they're blocking. That person comes around that corner and they don't slow down fast enough. They'll run smack right into that person. And only because people are in a rush and people are worried, it's all that kind of stuff. And to me, I think staying out of that queuing area is really important.
Yeah.
I really think that's important, and making that a one-way on that side of the building and the other being two-way. And that allows your customers options to turn there or to turn further down. Either way, they're going to get where they need to go. And safety.
I have to agree with Mary on that, because I have tried, and nothing against you. You went one time, and you were able to do it. God bless you, because that was great. I've tried several times, actually trying to make a left out of that driveway because I was parked there waiting for someone and for different things. It's almost impossible. On a Saturday or when there's busy times, you actually have to take a right and go out to Hazard Avenue, because people come to the light on Freshwater. You can make a right on Red. They don't even slow down. They just whip right into there. And, I mean,
And we're forgetting one major thing too here. Throw student drivers in the mix of all this congestion.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is people who have never driven.
Well, I mean, that's why I
Scary.
asked what they're gonna do to address, because we all had a concern when we were talking about Panera Bread, but it wasn't that intersection, it was closer to this intersection. This is the busiest intersection in the town of Enfield, would we agree?
Yes.
And now we're gonna throw student drivers in the middle. It's no different than the Nets drivers out of Summers and their 18-wheelers in 8 a.m. in the morning going down Hazard Avenue.
Miles an hour.
Every one of us have been irritated with them. They should be in a big empty parking lot learning how to drive, not in the biggest congested shopping area of our town.
We've done it before where we did circulation around the building instead.
Yeah. Dunkin' Donuts on South Road, the wrecking room.
Yeah.
So that would be my thoughts on that.
So I'll just comment on that AAA would be amenable to closing off that entrance to one-way on the eastern side, but we'd like to maintain two-way on the other entrance.
Oh, yeah, the lower ones would be fine.
Yes, it's just that area.
So just to clarify, it would be two-way in front of the bays, but in front of the handicap parking spaces to the queue, that would be one way into the plaza.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Just the curb cut.
Just the curb cut,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So we would have the appropriate signing bars to obviously convey that to the drivers.
Otherwise, your tow trucks will have a lively business.
They don't have tow trucks
I've been
there.
like Linda trying to get it.
They don't have tow trucks there.
You don't need one if they crash in the parking lot, right? Just push them.
Lori, can we, because Ken has raised it and I know it happens, could we have signs, for example, that say the area is prone to flooding, not to park their cars there in the threat of a heavy rain or something? Or long-term. Well, I know there is no long-term parking, but if they have a disabled car, somebody should be able to be aware that if they leave their car there in a rainstorm like we supposedly get tonight.
I suppose you could put that.
I'm
in there.
sorry?
I assume you could put something like that there, especially on the lower end.
Well, that's where I meant,
So,
right, where
yeah.
they're apt to, because they are displacing some.
Can you do that on private property without the owner's?
Well,
No,
it's
they
the
can.
owner's
They can,
application.
that- well,
I mean, the
yeah, but I
owner,
don't know how much of that property they control.
yeah. So
It's up
the
to the-
AAA
that's up to
doesn't
the owner.
necessarily control the whole property, but the owner is a part applicant. So,
Okay, all right, well, consider posting that
Yeah.
what's left of that it's prone to flooding and not to, maybe that would also alleviate some of your liability or someone's liability.
Yeah, we would have no problem with posting a sign that states, you know,
I don't know how you'd word it, maybe
Properties,
prone to flooding during heavy rain or
flood
something.
prone to flood and, but I'd just also like to remind the board that we don't have long-term parking on site. We don't, you know, keep cars that are waiting to be repaired. If there's a car that we can't finish up the repair job in the day, they leave them in the bay, so that there is not long-term parking of cars on our site.
But even to the effect that Kenny talked about, maybe somebody needs something that you can't handle right away, you aren't going to park anything outside.
That's correct. We do not park cars and store cars overnight. Our service offerings are completed that day, and on the rare occurrence that it's not, we leave the car in the bay until it's finished.
Where do you put your student driver cars?
I don't know that they actually provide student driving. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know that there's a driving school for classroom instruction here at this site. I don't know that we offer actual driving, lessons here.
I know you do the over 55 or whatever for cheaper insurance, but I just thought a driving school would have cars.
I think it would help the people anyhow, at least if it was posted. And
The driving school I went to made you bring your own car. No, it's in Enfield.
The driving school he went to in Enfield made him bring his own car. I never heard of that.
Some did.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just have one more question. In terms of, I was looking at your snow storage areas, and, you have one that's in the northeast corner of the building, I mean, in the parking lot, but then you also have one that's right adjacent to the northeast corner of the building. In terms of, could you really get snow storage there, of any appreciable height? Just looking at it in terms of, it's like right in the middle of everything there. And it's like, how high could you actually pile snow there?
That's not really long-term storage. It's kind of just snow moving while the storm is actually going on, but then it would most likely be trucked to other areas of the lot that's either underutilized or trucked off-site if it's during, Christmas, and we actually get a white Christmas, and, the lot is heavily utilized. So usually, like most other parking lots, it'll be stored, in the underutilized areas of the lot. It's more just the temporary holding to keep the bays open so they can continue to use the services.
Okay, as long as that's all it is, and
Yeah.
maybe you can put temporary, short-term, snow storage. Like you said, I looked at it and I said that, that it just doesn't seem right that you can actually put anything there. Okay, thank you.
I have two things that I noticed in the town engineer's comment. Everybody's addressed the turning and the queuing of the cars, but our town engineer said the site plan should clearly indicate the existing location of the inlet pipe to the underground flood compensation chambers. And then he said there was discussion with the applicant's engineer about the flood compensation calculations. There is a question whether the excavation within the existing floodplain proposed around the new building can be considered as compensatory area. So I wondered if that was addressed yet.
Sorry, we're just looking exactly what it actually says here. 1 second. Inlet pipes, that's the existing system, right?
Yeah.
So the inlet for the underground flood compensatory storage chambers, as we mentioned before, those are an expansion of the, it's up on the screen there. I'm not sure if your screen is on.
No,
So it's an
Well,
expansion.
he just wants you to show
Yeah.
where it is.
We can definitely add that to the plans. It's basically the stormwater piping network within the plaza now is utilized as the backwash from the flood to connect the Chick-fil-A chambers, these chambers, and the rest of the system. So we can clearly delineate that on the plans. In terms of the flood compensation calculations, the best spot to do flood compensatory storage is adjacent to where you're filling, right? So the skimming of the parking lot, although maybe a little bit unconventional, is really the best spot to do compensatory storage, as it's the closest to the wetland. It's directly within the parking lot that fills. So those immediate storms that come quickly, that is the best spot to provide that relief for what we've done in this parking spot. We added narratives to the stormwater management report discussing that. The state and all those entities that kind of dictate guidelines for compensatory storage don't have requirements of where it can and cannot be. Just from an engineering standpoint, connecting, a low-lying area next to the filled area is just logically where it should be.
I understand what you're telling me. I just would like somebody to double check with the town engineer to make sure he's understanding it the way you are, and then there's no questions down the road.
Understood.
All right, all done? Nothing left? How about the right? So,
It's a public hearing, we have to open it.
no, I will, but.
Did Ken get his
if
questions
you're done,
answered?
If that's right, you're ready.
Did you get your questions answered?
We didn't get any questions answered about the parking.
Okay.
Rich came up with an idea, or Linda, about their entrance, but it does nothing for that intersection, and the police have concerns on it. They didn't answer it.
What was the portion of the question that wasn't answered? Because I believe the concern was the sight line and the queuing for access, right?
Right.
So turning this to a one-way in, there's no sight line problem anymore because you're not leaving this driveway, and the queue isn't a problem because you're going in, you're not going towards the queue, you're going away from the queue.
They're not going to let them out.
You have to
There's only
put
one
fire
way in.
lanes also, he said.
Right, so, yeah, posting signs and fire and striping is not a problem. So, I mean, that is his concern as I read it, unless I'm misunderstanding your question.
Okay, I'm good for now.
The other concern is, Lori, is the fire lanes marked and signed.
That certainly could be a condition of approval. That's not.
Okay, because it's not in the conditions of approval. If they're
Right,
read.
yeah, we were just writing out
Okay.
these things.
It's something the police department picked up on that. Nothing, okay. Anyone in the public would like to speak in favor or against this application? Anyone in the public would like to speak in favor or against the application? Last call to speak in favor or against the application. Well, hearing none. Are you people want me to close it? Is that, I see nods. Then we'll close public hearing 29.
I got it. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve public hearing 2929 in relationship to the draft resolution that we have in our package dated December 20th, 2018, having 28 conditions currently. I think that what we wanted to do is add some additional conditions that are site-specific.
Right.
And, one of the conditions is that we will make the east entry into the building parking area a one-way, delineation, so we don't get a problem with the queuing occurring at the traffic at Freshwater Boulevard. A second condition is that the fire lanes will be, delineated as to where they are and where they can occur. A third condition is that we would add some site-specific, signage that would indicate that there could potentially be flooding occurring, within the lower portion of the parking area.
I'd like
Second.
to add,
Oh, if I
I'd like
may.
to add a fifth. Would be, and they said that there will be no towing and overnight storage at the facility.
Correct. Yeah, that definitely should be in there.
We don't want crash cars leak in.
No outside storage.
No
is it?
outside, well, no, it's not a tow yard.
Right.
Right.
Right, no towing and no storage of vehicles outside.
Correct. So we would add those, additional conditions.
If I may, just to add as a condition that the concerns of the Water Pollution Control Authority be added on as a site-specific condition.
Yes, that too.
So we've added 5.
Second?
6.
No, I said second, because I guess we got all the conditions.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, it's all right.
Okay, if there's 5, according to our counter over there.
What?
Is 6.
It's 6.
That's 6.
Okay, have you got all the conditions down, and are you in agreement with
You good?
the conditions?
We have 5 conditions. What's the 6th?
Well, that's what I,
So we had east entrance,
East en-
fire lane, signage, no storage outside, and WPCA. That's 5.
well, no, and there
the
was
towing
one
and
on the
storage.
signage where,
No,
That's all
outside
that.
storage of vehicles.
signage of the flooding?
Storage.
He didn't say that.
I did.
Oh,
That's
you-
5.
I got 5.
I have 5.
All right.
And I'd just like
How
to
many you got, Rich?
clarify on the towing.
5. I didn't write them down. It was
Oh,
too
I
quick.
thought you were reading them off.
No.
So they're building, yeah.
I didn't write them down. If I had time to write them down, I would have.
We don't control those. Like the third party tow company.
Well, you might
Well, you-
encourage the tow cup drivers not to come at night because of the fact that you're in a floodplain. And if it's a damaged vehicle, they're going to leak all over the place.
Understood. I just want to make that clear that we can't control what other people do to bring cars and drop them on the property.
I appreciate your honesty.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just want a clarification. Under general conditions, number 4, exterior mechanicals and electricals to be boxed and screened, that means on ground and rooftop? Okay. Thank you.
Anything further? Do you have any problems with the conditions, or the stated no?
No.
It's up to you, people. Well, motion's made, or all we added.
Yeah, it's opened and
It's been,
closed.
it's open and closed. And who made the motion? Rich made the motion.
Jenny seconded it.
Jenny second, okay.
All good.
Then vote. All in favor? Opposed? 1 opposed? And no abstentions.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Uh, 2927 Hazard Avenue. Secretary, please take the roll and read the legal notice.
The Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, December 20th at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, concerning the following application.
Sir,
Public-
just as a shortage, you may use yours up on our tripod.
Public hearing 2927, 264 Hazard Avenue, application to divide 2 lots that were previously merged. Carrie Rubin, owner applicant, map 83, lot 48, Hazardville Business Local Zone, Hazardville Design Overlay District. Charles Duran.
Here.
Charles Ladd.
Here.
Nick Lefakis.
Here.
Mary Scott.
Here.
Virginia Higley.
Here,
Ken Nelson. He
Out on his
stepped out.
nose.
Yeah, stepped out. Linda DeGray.
Here.
Richard Suzak is here.
Okay, if you will, introduce yourselves and proposal.
Good evening. My name is Mark Peterson, engineer with Gardner and Peterson Associates in Tolland, Connecticut. With me is Kerry Rubin, the owner and applicant of the property. So we're here to ask for a special permit to divide parcels that were previously merged. Kerry purchased the property back in the summer of 2017. The deed that is recorded in the clerk's office outlines this as two separate parcels. I had a conversation with the prior planner in town, and he alerted me that the parcels had been merged, which we were unaware of. So that was a difficult conversation I had with Kerry to alert them that they had been merged. We did look at the regulations, and there are provisions in your regulations that allow us to divide merged properties. So as we mentioned, the site is at 264 Hazard Avenue. Frontage on Hazard Avenue, also frontage on Southview to the south of us, as shown on the colored plan that I have. There's a total of 0.78 acres on the site, 86.86 feet of frontage along Hazard Ave, 141.41 feet along Southview Street. So as I mentioned, our goal is to unmerge these properties. Looking at your regulations, they have us create a neighborhood, which I calculated and put on the plan. Working with staff, they had made some modifications to the size of that neighborhood, which I support. Essentially a total of 21 properties located between Hazard Ave and Southview. The regulations have us look at the median property size, and that's what they ask us to meet, though there are provisions for a 10% reduction in the amount of frontage and area, noting that the result is compatible with the relationship to the neighborhood, which in this case I feel it is. We have an existing building along Hazard Ave that's been there for years, that stood alone by itself when it was a parcel of its own on Hazard Ave. We have a unused residential property in the back, as the zone line roughly divides this property in half in terms of depth. So the property to the south really has no benefit to the commercial land, as they would not be able to use it. We feel they'd be better suited dividing them into two parcels. When we look at the median size, 12,350 square feet is what I've calculated looking at the GIS information of our median area. Taking a 10% reduction would get us down to 11,115 required. Parcel A, which I'm calling the northerly parcel fronting on Hazard Ave, would have 11,196 square feet, complying with the area requirement, and Parcel B is substantially bigger. Also, in terms of frontage, 96 feet is the median requirement for frontage. Utilizing a 10% reduction, because it's compliant, in my opinion, with the neighborhood, would go down to an 86.4, and we would have it just over that 86.86 feet along Hazard Ave, what I'm calling Parcel A, and then substantially more, 141.41 along Parcel B. So with that, we feel that it meets the neighborhood and meets the intent of your regulation. We'll be happy to take on any questions that you may have.
Questions?
If I'm correct, I unmerged a lot down on Carl Street that was the same exact situation as this. It was a commercial property on Enfield Street and a residential lot behind it. And working with the town, we found that, nobody can say, yes, that property was definitely merged, because nobody really knows. And what they had said is because one was business and the other one was residential, it could not be merged because there were two separate zones. And this meets the same exact thing.
Yeah, sure
and I
does.
did not have to go through an unmerging process for that property. Therefore, I'm saying, I personally feel these gentlemen shouldn't have to be here. That property could never be merged, being residential and commercial.
I think you got poor advice from the former planner.
On the map, all laid out.
So,
That's sort of
you
what.
guys are agreeing with me.
Well, but
So, I would ask that this is not a merged parcel, and
How was this determined be merged?
The assessor did merge these way back
Assessor did
when,
it?
like many, many years ago. However, the deed doesn't show it as merged. So, but it's being assessed as one parcel. I
So
believe.
if the deed doesn't show it, that would automatically mean.
So so what it is the assessors, as long as the lots are owned by the same owner and they're undersized, they just automatically merge them. I'm not
but
sure.
they're not undersized. These lots meet. And, you know, I had one on Park Avenue. They didn't even touch each other. There was a house between the two lots, and the assessor merged them together. How do you merge together two lots that don't touch each other?
Well, I would think-
There's a house in the middle.
I wouldn't think they'd have the legal authority.
They don't. They don't.
Do it anyway.
They don't. And that's why I'm saying we just, right now, it's not a merged lot.
Well, if they paid a fee, they also should get a return.
I would think so, yes.
Yeah.
Apologize that they're even here.
Yeah, so right now, the property is shown as the Hazardville Business Local, both of them. So
They both are?
it's very bizarre, and I think that there had been a lot of
But that's what
questions
I'm saying
before
about-
I came on, and we were just trying to make it work, so
No, I
if it is,
understand,
if
and
it
that's
is
what I'm saying.
merged,
It is so, the whole merging thing in this town is absurd.
I don't
mean,
like
how do
it.
you make it
Yeah.
both business local when it's not?
Well, how
So
come
the
they-
assessor's overriding planning and zoning.
yeah, I think that's something that we need to address.
Absolutely.
But at
But
this
I don't
point,
want to tie these gentlemen
well,
up.
at
in
this
the-
point, if
On the
you
zoning-
feel that it's not an issue, you may
On
as
the
well just-
zoning
I'd just like to say how you've tied me up for the past year and a half of owning this property, cost me well over $10,000 in fees for something that never should have happened in the first place, all because of the incompetence of the former people that worked here, all right? Nobody knew anything about any way to do anything, and
Yep.
I've had so much aggravation. I own the property next door,
Yep.
which used to be United Bank. They gave me aggravation for a year on that property. I bought this property here right next door, all right? The aggravation that I've gone through from this town between the town planner, the building inspectors, and everybody else has cost me thousands upon thousands of dollars in lost money and in lost time, all right? And all of this could have been avoided right from the start, and we wanted them to just unmerge it. The parcels were laid out right on the map, okay? All the dimensions were right there. All they had to do is split it and tax it as two separate pieces. All right, it's a simple writing of the deed, all right, to change it. And nobody in this town would take the responsibility to be able to say that it could be done, all right?
Lori, quick question. Are they both zoned the same, or are they zoned differently on our zoning map? Pardon me?
They're zoned different on zoning.
Yes.
But the assessor
I
put
know.
them in the
I-
same zone.
So
Right.
I think that we need to investigate this, like I said, in the future. At this
Right
point, I
now.
would like to give this applicant, this citizen,
Absolutely.
give him his merger, whether
Yeah.
whether it's supposed to be there or not. I just say, let him be on his way.
Yes,
All right,
exactly.
so open
Who's
the
gonna do
public
the
hearing,
motion?
get public comments,
Oh,
and
yeah.
let these gentlemen go home.
Yes.
Right,
Let's
but
vote and go.
I
Yes.
still would
Yes.
like to see whether we merge it or unmerge it. If it's true, is that, whatever you find out is return whatever fees you.
No,
Yeah.
you can't.
The thing is that
been
it is in the
advertised.
regulations to unmerge. There is a way to unmerge. That's why they're here the way they are.
Yeah.
That was the best I could do when I met with them
Right.
almost 4 months ago now, I think.
The only way to give him
So-
his money back is if.
I could
he-
say Lori is the only one that ever made any sense in this town.
That's why she's our planner.
Well, thank you, but I'm
It's
sure
okay.
that's not true.
Anyone in the public would like to speak in favor or against this application?
Lori, if we vote on
Anyone in
this,
the
is he
public would
still
like to
eligible to
speak
get
in
his money
favor or
back?
against the application? Last call to speak in favor or against the application. Hearing none, it's closed 2927.
Not if it's not merged.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the, I guess, draft resolution that we have in our packet dated December 20th, 2018, to approve the division of the merged lots located at 264 Hazard Avenue.
Second.
Any questions, debate? All in favor? Unanimous. They're unmerged.
They're unmerged, yes.
Thank you for your patience.
We're sorry.
What's the process at present for, the assessors still have the ability to do this?
Yes.
I always advise clients, when you buy a property, two separate properties like this, Charlie A. Dern and Charlie Dern, done. Or they're in different zones. They can't be merged, and that's what I'm saying. He got caught up in something, and I think we need to address this,
Well,
like
that's what
Lori
I'm
said,
saying.
immediately to prevent this from happening.
Well,
Shouldn't
we
it?
don't have any control over the assessor.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
totally
he's got to
different.
follow legal regulations, I would think.
Well, the assessor can't change zones, Jenny.
sorry?
She
You have
can't.
something to say.
Okay.
Well, we'll
doesn't
address
update
this
her records.
further at a later time. I
Yes.
mean, we're not going to
Yes.
solve this tonight.
No, I know, but
Did you have comments?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for the approval. We appreciate it. We appreciate you looking into making sure others may not go through this struggle. I appreciate some of you commenting about possibly returning some fees. We'd be very interested in hearing that. If there's a way you could make a motion or a suggestion where Kerry could get some of his fees back, it would
That's why I
appreciate
didn't want
it.
it to go to a vote.
Officially, this is
I-
merged, though. I mean, on the assessor's
so,
records,
whether we-
they've been merged.
I've been where you are. I've done the fight. I agree. It's the best we can do for you right now. I'd say be happy with it. We have new town employees that are doing a great job.
They sure are.
And hopefully she continues to stick with us.
We actually got new at the building department too, so.
Yeah.
If the council's listening,
yep.
she deserves a nice bonus for Christmas. The whole staff does.
Well, how about us?
We're volunteers. We can't accept money.
We can get money, I'm sure.
oh, brother. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Next property you buy, put it in a different name.
He may have-
Have a good night.
Oh, yes. Well, let's, anybody want to volunteer for CROG liaison?
Merger thing in this town is so disgusting.
Don't go at once.
I sat in that office and
We can appoint somebody that's not here.
there's a house between
She goes
them.
to Hartford anyway.
Merge 'em.
No,
Well, they are.
I'll teach her not
that's
to show up.
unfair. That's really unfair to do somebody.
That's some powerful magic.
Okay,
All right, we need,
what are we going to do?
I make a motion that we table this until we get a full commission with, everybody here so that we can have a discussion and determine who
Yeah.
might be available.
I agree, second.
Okay,
Well,
all in
I
favor,
volunteer
table it?
not to be it.
Tabling.
tabling.
Table.
We're tabling.
Tabling. Okay.
Move along.
Do you want to volunteer?
No, I said I volunteer not to volunteer.
Yeah, yeah. Do you need another candy cane?
Bribery.
Truck it down.
Okay, where are we?
That's for not volunteering.
Correspondence, any correspondence from the commissioners?
Yes.
Yes.
A couple properties. One, did we actually take a look at the property on the corner of Wagon Road and Post Office? And now I see he has garage sale signs up to try to cover what he's doing there. And then there is another property on the corner of Steel Road and Bess. Now it's the second Bess, because Bess loops around. And you'll see there's all kinds of junk vehicles in the yard. It's a corner lot, unfortunately, so you can see it from Steel Road pretty bad. I'm getting calls on it and stuff, and That's all I have.
What's the first one, wagon and what?
Wagon and post office.
Um,
I mentioned it last meeting.
I was driving down Taylor Road the other day, and there's a whole bunch of store closing signs, and they're for a store in, I think it's Chicopee, but it's Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah, they've been all over Elm
Yeah,
Street,
so
too.
I understand that Rick is straight out, but those are easy to take out.
In his defense, I was on Taylor Road, 8:30, 9 o'clock, Monday morning.
Oh, I'm sure he was out
He
there.
was out there, pulled over, trunk open, pulling
Yes.
those very signs because they plastered
I know.
by
Yeah,
the
we're all
prison
over town,
bed. And Rick himself, I saw him myself doing his job, absolutely.
I would like to know, lastly, if Rick has had any luck on South Road with that barrier at that house, because it was on town property. And he was working on it, but
It's
I
a
haven't seen it.
mailbox,
Yeah, I haven't seen anything about it.
It's a
Yeah.
stone structure, right?
Yeah, on town property. So I was just curious if he'd made any headway.
We'll follow up at the next meeting with
Thank you.
something from Rick.
Mr. Chair, I just have one thing in terms of, we did have an Economic Development Commission this past month, and we discussed actively the TIF, amendment that's going on, or, the TIF program that's going on. And, I guess what we're doing is we're sort of, relooking at the sites that we would put a TIF on, and because of the fact that the mall recently got sold to the highest bidder of like $10 million, and so, potentially we're looking at that area being redeveloped. So I think that what we need to do is we need to start looking at the possibility of changing our regulations so that we can make that area a little more, amiable or special,
Special
design
development
district.
like Bigelow.
Yeah, so that we can, create a discipline type of, development in that area. So, that said, I think that what we need to do is start considering that.
The other thing, reading in the newspaper recently, that other towns were selected for selling cannabis. We could have been one, and we are not prepared, and I've asked for several years that we get something in our zoning regulations of where these can be located if and when they're located in town.
Well, the question is do you just consider that medical, just like a CVS or a pharmacy? Or do you want separate regulations?
Separate stores, I
For
understand.
medical marijuana, yes, but not necessarily for recreational.
Oh, yeah. This is.
Recreational marijuana.
Well, we don't allow recreational
Well, it
marijuana in the state
soon
yet.
will be, I'm sure, because they're
You
looking.
know so much about this topic, Charlie.
I don't
Listening to
really.
the new
I just see
governor.
it's coming, and some people may not want it in their area. It's much like the problems we had with the bookstore.
For strip bars.
But our new governor coming in is already talking about opening it up, so.
We gotta be prepared, because you don't want it on every corner. And from what I read about Massachusetts, they've been really drawing Connecticut people and their own there.
So you're saying you would like to see some sample regulations that would regulate,
Right, exactly.
not medical,
Medical.
but recreational?
Both, well, really.
They both, okay.
I consider it like a package store, and it should
I
probably have to
consider it
follow
a
the
pharmacy
same.
for, a pharmacy for medical and,
But Holland,
yeah,
Whatever.
yep.
Holland sells it.
But a pharmacy can be put next to a school, a package store can't.
We'll do some research. I can
what I
even just
mean.
contact CCM and they'll research
right,
who's got
and it may
these
be where you
regulations in
want.
place.
Okay. Yes, sir. Oh, ma'am.
Oh, just before you go over there, I just have something from the last engineer, the principal engineer for Metro Park North. They're going to be submitting their final plans, but for them to file their special permit's going to be expiring. He just made a request for an extension for 60 days so that, we can review it and make sure that it meets your conditions. So if you guys are
I vote
acceptable.
to put the extension on so that staff can review it.
I'm sorry, you
Second.
vote for it, or you making a motion?
I'm sorry, I make a motion.
Is this the
Second.
650,000
Excuse me,
square
what do we?
feet?
The big project, 100 pages to read at least.
Yeah. I
What's
thought we
this?
approved that the,
You did, but we don't have final plans yet from them.
So we need to vote.
We need a second.
second, Oh.
Seconded it. We need
sorry.
Mary
Won't
seconded
happen
vote
again.
for extension,
Okay,
60 days?
all in favor?
All right.
No, I do not.
Take it home to your wife.
Authorization for-
Authorization for administrative approval, 2 Middle Road. What is it?
Well, 2 Middle Road is an applicant who's looking to convert an existing retail space for the sales of tobacco, vaping, and CBD products.
So there is your,
There we go, huh?
No, it's not a package store. CBD, it's not the strand of THC from like
No.
marijuana. It's like
No,
the,
no.
the topical
No,
oils.
no, no. Middle. That's where Long Radio is, across the street.
it's a smoke shop,
Yes.
Basically, it's a retail going to retail.
right? And there's your medical marijuana's going. Or if it's recreational, then it's tobacco. So there's your first store.
Well, it could be, yeah. Okay, that's up, all in favor of that one?
There was no motion.
Well, then do
I'd
it.
like to make a motion that we approve SPR 1762 for administrative approval.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded, all in favor? 7-0.
Can
Okay,
I ask a
SBR.
question? And since the day I came here, she has to come and get us to vote for administrative approval. Why?
Yes,
That's
well,
kind of a contradiction of terms.
It should be that she calls
I know why it.
Charlie. No, 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 no.
I
It should be.
understand that, but the history's gone.
No, it isn't. Well, it can return,
I
I'm
do
sorry.
believe it's in the regulations.
It is
so,
in the regulations.
Yes.
So we need to modify the regulations.
Yes, so that you can pick up
when
the
you feel
phone and call
comfortable enough to do
Charlie.
so.
And if Charlie thinks that it needs to be viewed by us all, then fine.
Well, I tell you, it saves a lot of problems if somebody comes back and complains about it.
I
You
know.
say it's,
I know.
it's not her decision to whatever.
It's on us, not on
It's
her.
on,
Yeah,
it's on all
well,
of us.
I think the little ones she would gladly shoulder.
But there was other.
But we don't
Very-
allow her to.
You never
Well,
gave
that's what I'm
guarantee.
trying to say.
All right,
I'm
well, let's
go on to.
let's go on.
future conversation.
Was the motion made on 1763?
Saying that, and we don't have the conversation.
Okay, what
Can you
is
tell
it?
us about,
Yes, 1763 is a site plan review for the authorization for Phase 1. They're going to be basically making the spill containment in the guidelines of the federal requirement.
Well, if they're, that's all designed anyhow.
And they're going to come back with another Phase 2 for a site
Yeah,
plan review.
that's-
This is just to get them in compliance
We don't
federally.
need to see that
Yeah,
anyway.
Okay.
no.
so a motion to approve an SPR 1763 for administrative approval?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Applications received. Enfield Terrace. We cleared the deck on basically all the large material. This was in before a year ago?
Couple of years, no,
2 years ago.
more.
And apparently they've changed their design or whatever. Are they ready?
Did it fail?
We're reviewing the plans, and we're hoping to get them onto the next meeting, which would be January 3rd, if you guys are amenable to that.
Weren't they at, was it ZBA or Wetlands?
Wetlands, they already received their approval. Now that we circulated their plans, and we're looking for feedback from other department heads.
Okay.
Well, if they're not ready, though, in other words, if you put them on the next one, will there be enough time to advertise after you're sure that they have
Yes,
everything?
we already circulated, and before noon tomorrow, we're going to know if
Okay.
it's going to be ready or not.
Okay, thank you.
And 2931, yeah, 158 Pearl Street.
this applicant. He's just looking to convert that house into a duplex. Currently, right now, the zoning regulations require it to be a special permit in the area right now.
It's a conversion, okay. Put it on, that shouldn't take too long. If they're ready to. Any other unresolved issues?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Good.
I oppose.